What's up, vinyl community? It's your boy Ryan Webb back here with another video. Today I'm going to be starting part one of a three-part video series I'm going to be doing on this channel, and that series is going to be essential records from different decades that are records that are essential, at least in my opinion. And so today we're going to be doing part one of that, and part one is going to be technically 2 decades, and that is the 50s and 60s. And I'm combining them both because I don't really have enough records from both decades to make one video. It would just be one little short, like 2-minute video for each probably. And so I just decided to combine the two. So without further ado, let's get into our 50s records. We got only 5 on my list here on my computer. So let's start off with number 1 from the 50s that you have to own. That is the legend Buddy Holly. Buddy Holly is probably my favorite of the early 50s rock and roll movement. He just made some great records in such a short amount of time, and I love this album so much. It's a great early album in a time when albums were just kind of seen as collections of singles, but this one sure doesn't feel like it. And in my opinion, if you're a fan of early rock and roll, you have to own this album. And if you also live in Texas like I do, you especially have to own a Buddy Holly record. It's like essential. I can't think of the word. I'm just gonna say essentially. You have to own Buddy Holly if you live in Texas. And anyways, on to the next one. I'm sure you guys saw this one coming. It's Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll. Now, I know he has a lot of studio albums, but this is the only record I have of his, and even if I did have his studio albums, I'd still probably just choose this record because it's got all of his 50s classics. It's got Hound Dog, Heartbreak Hotel, Jailhouse Rock, Love Me Tender. I mean, this is just a great compilation from his early days in the 50s, and if you can find a good copy of it like this, do not hesitate to pick it up. Now, next up, we got a country album. We got Marty Robbins' Gunfighter Ballads and Trail Songs. This has Big Iron and El Paso, and if those 2 songs don't sell you on this album, I don't know what will. This is just a great early concept record, and I'm not the biggest country fan in the world, but I do love this album a lot, and I think you should own it. It's great. Next up, we've got Frank Sinatra, Only the Lonely, which I need more Frank Sinatra in my collection. At the moment, I've only got this one and his Christmas record, and those 2 are great albums, especially this one. It's also a concept album about he sings songs for Only the Lonely. It's kind of in that same vein of albums like In the Wee Small Hours. The songs aren't very happy, but that doesn't mean that they're bad. It's a great record, obviously, or else it wouldn't be on this list. And I need more Frank Sinatra in my collection, but if you do as well, make sure you have this album in your collection. And now for our last 50s record, we got Richie Valens. Now, this dude was only 17 years old when he died, but man, did he make some great stuff, and especially this album. Like, for an album made by a 17-year-old, this album kicks ass. It's got so many, like, it's got all of his biggest songs on it, and even some of the deeper cuts are, like, they kill it. Like, it's such a shame he died so young because this album is so good, and I wish we could have gotten more from Richie. Okay, now we're moving on to the 60s, and for our first 60s record, I've got an album that probably a lot of you own because you found it in a dollar bin, and that is Herb Alpert and his Tijuana Brass with Whipped Cream and Other Delights. This is an album that I know in the vinyl community has been known as just an essential dollar bin record, and I mean, I agree with it because it's a really good album. It's just a nice album to throw on and relax to. Just a nice, smooth jazz record, and if you see it in a dollar bin or even for free, make sure you grab this. It's worth for the cheap price. Next up, we've got the Beach Boys' iconic Pet Sounds. It's got some of their biggest hits. It's a Brian Wilson masterpiece, everyone knows it. You gotta love it, and if you don't love it, I don't know why you wouldn't, because compared to the surf rock stuff that we all know the Beach Boys for as well, this album just stands out so much, as well as some of their other stuff in their discography that I'll be talking in other videos about, because the Beach Boys made some great albums, and this is one of them. You gotta own it, and if you don't, buy it. Next up, I'm sure this is another thing everyone saw coming for the 60s. We got the Beatles, and I chose Revolver, even though my favorite album of theirs is Magical Mystery Tour. I gotta admit, this one probably musically is their best record. It's just so good. It combines their early uh, pop rock sounding, or just not pop rock, more rock and roll sounding, with the later, I guess, kind of identities of each of the Beatles whenever they all came and found themselves as writers, or they're doing the same thing. And it's also got the psychedelicness that we all know them for, if psychedelicness is a word. Just a great record, essential to everyone's collection. Now we've got also another country record, Johnny Cash with Ring of Fire. Now this one, of course, has his iconic Ring of Fire. We all know that song. You gotta love it. It's a great song, but this also has my favorite Johnny Cash song on it, 40 Shades of Green. That song is just so beautiful. The strings and backing vocals are perfect. It's beautiful. And this record is also really good. Even though it's called the best of Ring of Fire, the best of Johnny Cash, I don't think it's technically a greatest hits album, but it still is really good. And if you're a fan of early country like I am, then it's a great album to have in your collection, and you can generally find it for pretty cheap. Now we've got A Love Supreme by John Coltrane. Now I'm not really a jazz expert. I've kind of heard more of the jazz classics. I haven't dove into the rabbit hole that is jazz vinyl, but I have heard a lot of classics, and this one, of all the ones I've heard, is probably my favorite. This is a great album, and you should own it if you don't have much jazz. This one, and probably Miles Davis's Kind of Blue, which I still need to get a copy of as well. But if you're like me and you're just kind of dipping your toes into the water, not fully diving into the pool of jazz records, then make sure you get this one at least in your collection. Next up, we've got Creedence Clearwater Revival. Now, I've only got a few records in their collection, and they're all really good, but this is the one that I find reaching for the most. Bayou Country. It's got Born on the Bayou and Proud Mary on it. And I mean, CCR, they made some great timeless records, and I think we can all agree that we love them here, or at least like them a lot. And this, in my opinion, is the one that you should get if you're just wanting one CCR album. And next up, we've got, of course, Jimi Hendrix with Are You Experienced? I mean, this is just a classic psychedelic record from one of the greatest guitar players of all time. I mean, do I even need to say a whole lot about this record? If you don't own it already and you're a fan of early rock and roll guitars, you're missing out. You need to have this album in your collection pronto. Now, next up, we've got Led Zeppelin. Now, I'm not a big fan of Led Zeppelin. I think they're good, but I don't love them, I know, as much as a lot of people do. However, this record I think is really, really good. It's their best, in my opinion. It's a blues rock album, which is kind of different to more like what we know them for, like Stairway to Heaven. But still, this is an amazing album, and if you're going to own one Led Zeppelin album, make sure it's this one. Now we've got proto-punk genius, in my opinion, MC5 with Kick Out the Jams. This is a live album, and it is just so good. Like the title track, Kick Out the Jams, Ramblin' Rose, Borderline, I Want You Right Now. This is just a great jamming album that makes you want to pick up a guitar and play it after you've listened to it. And I mean, even though original pressings can be a bit pricey, you can always go for a later copy without the gatefold like I did. And just, this is a great record. I know I'm saying about all records on this list, but that's why they're essential, because they're great, and especially this one. And here is Pink Floyd with The Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Now this is psychedelic Pink Floyd. It's definitely a lot different from what we know them with, like Dark Side of the Moon and Wish You Were Here, but it's, like anyone who's heard Piper at the Gates of Dawn will tell you that this is a great album. It's led by Syd Barrett, and this was before David Gilmour joined. And Syd Barrett, even though his time in Pink Floyd was short because, you know, he took a lot of drugs and went crazy, the stuff he made was great, especially in this one, like Astronomy Domain, Lucifer Sam, Pow Art Talk H is weird but great, and you got the instrumental Interstellar Overdrive, and the end with Bike, which is like this super happy song at first, and towards the end of it just becomes so weird, and I love it, and this is a great 60s record to own. Now we've got the legends Simon and Garfunkel. Now these dudes only released 5 albums, but man, are those 5 albums great. And of all now 4 of their 5 albums came out in the 60s, and in my opinion this is the best of their 60s one. It's just so beautiful. It's got Scarborough Fair, Canticle, Cloudy, Homeward Bound, The 59th Street Bridge song, Dangling Conversation, Flowers Over Been with the Rainfall, the parody of Bob Dylan, A Simple Desultory Prolific, or How I Was Robert McNamara into Submission, For Emily Whenever I Find Her, and then you've got this mashup of news clips and the song Silent Night, which is a beautiful way to end off the album, and this is just an amazing, amazing album. This is the best of their 60s, however, not the best of their career. In my opinion, Bridget Over Troubled Water is their best album, but this one comes pretty close to that record. And now, along with MC5 proto-punk, we've got the Stooges, another proto-punk genius album. I mean, everyone knows the Stooges, you know, this was the band Iggy Pop was in before he was just solo Iggy Pop. And this has some of their classic songs from the Stooges, like 1969, I Want to Be Your Dog, and No Fun. And it's got some other deeper cuts on it that I really like We Will Fall and Anne, which is probably my favorite Stooges song. This is just got some killer guitarists from Ron Ashton, and Iggy Pop, of course. He's the strange but amazing frontman that we all know and love. You need to own this album, in my opinion. And finally, we've got the poster that's on the wall behind me, even though it's not really in shot too well, I don't think. But anyways, we got the Velvet Underground and Nico. I mean, if you haven't heard this album, you're really missing out. This is one of my favorite albums of all time. It's probably my top 5 records. It is just so good. The band takes being not perfect and makes it perfect. Like, the production is not the best, but they make the best out of it. And it's, I mean, everyone knows the album from the cover, and it's got so many great songs like Sunday Morning, I'm Waiting for the Man, Venus in Furs, All Tomorrow's Parties, Heroin, There She Goes Again, I'll Be Your Mirror. Of all the records that I just showed, this one's probably my favorite and the one that I'd recommend the most. But of course, all these records I love and think that if you're into 50s and 60s rock or whatever other genres I showed, you should own. But yeah, this was a fun video to make. I can't wait. I'm probably going to be filming part 2 soon, and along with the Essential series I'm going to be doing, I'm also making a couple other videos. I'm not going to say what they are at the moment, but one of them is probably going to be the next video I upload after this one, so stay tuned for that one. But anyways, I have been Ryan Webb, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.